Welcome in Algebra 2 to section 9.6, solving rational equations. This will be the final section in this chapter before the test. One nice thing, not a whole lot new, except now, instead of just adding and subtracting the rational expressions, we're going to actually be solving something, so you can actually plug it back in and find a solution. We'll be working on the problems that are circled as we go through here. In class we will be doing a few extras, but again we can only fit so much on tape, so here we go. We still need to be looking for a common denominator here. Now, similar to what we discussed before, we look at coefficients first, then we look at our lonely variables, our ones that are not connected to a plus or minus, that are just kind of individual. We take the largest exponent, and then we'll be looking for individual quantities or sets of parentheses that each individual one of those that's unique needs to be included. So here we go, we'll kind of start easy and work our way back through. If you notice here again, we're looking just at the denominators, trying to find a common one. Now again, if I look at my coefficients, I just see 3's there. So I see right away that 3 will be part of my new denominator. Then I go back and all I see are x's, okay? No different values for my exponent. So 3x becomes my common denominator. Just like before, the 7, the 1, and the 5 that were already in the numerator of these fractions will continue to be there. However, what we're going to want to do here now, again, is look to see. In going from my old denominator to my new one, what's missing? Well, a 3 is. So in this case, I end up needing to put that 3 in the numerator to balance things. And again, I can always look back and say, well, 21 divided by 3x, 21 over 3 would be 7x. So I get the same thing back. This is just a different form. It's kind of this equation in disguise. Second equation already is the same thing. They both are 3x. We're not going to do anything with those. But then finally, the last one, again, I'm going from 3 to 3x. Well, what do I need? I need the x, because I already have the 3. So now that I've done that, I've done the hard part. I can look at this point, and here's where things change a little bit with these. At this point, these all have the same denominator. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm just going to take the numerators, rewrite this, and that will be the equation that I'm solving. Well, now what happened to the 3x? Well, what I could do is I could have the 3x there and then multiply both sides by 3x, but that would just cancel the 3x's out anyway. So it's nice to save a step when we can. I'll simplify the left side of my equation, divide by 5, and get my solution. Now notice up at the top it says make sure you check your answers. Here's the reason for that. If your x value causes one of your denominators to equal 0, that's undefined. That wouldn't work. So make sure, just take that extra 5 seconds or something to make sure that plugging that 4 in either of my denominators doesn't cause a 0. It doesn't here, so that's an okay solution. And we're going to do that as we work through all of these. Now, here's another suggestion I would make. If you see a binomial term that's locked up with a plus or minus, put your own parentheses around it if you don't see it right away, because that way you make sure that you're not going to try to either cancel or forget about part of your common denominator. However, I can factor my last portion here. My difference of squares makes it x plus 2, x minus 2. So again, cross that out, and now build your common denominator. So every unique set of parentheses, every unique quantity that we see, so the x plus x minus 2, okay, and again I only need to use it once, the x plus 2, so that's going to be included, okay, everything that we already had in the numerator. And some of you may find a way as we go through these to start skipping some steps. And you're like, well, I can figure out, what I need to build this fraction before I even do this whole part here. And that's fine. But don't do it trying to skip steps and get away with lack of doing homework and then have the quiz go bad. I'm just saying. So again, here I'm looking from my old denominator to my new one. I got the x minus 2, but I don't have the x plus 2. I need that part. Move to the next one. I have the x minus 2. I don't have the x excuse me, I have the x plus 2. I don't have the x minus 2. Sorry about that. And then the last one, I have the x plus 2. I have the x minus 2, so I need nothing. So just rewrite out what I have. And then, of course, as we normally would here, we're going to distribute. We're going to combine like terms. And the one extra thing we're going to do here, because I see there's a squared term, I'm going to have to factor. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to plus the 4 over to go ahead and have all my terms together. Now at this point you need to find a way to factor this. Whether that's slide and divide, whether you're good at it mentally, it's up to you. But again, we've done this enough. I'm not going to include that here. So if you did your slide and divide, if you did your mental math here, those are the factors that you would end up with for this particular problem. And then again, we set those each equal to 0. And solve them. However, again, make sure that you go back and plug into the original. Negative 1/3 doesn't cause a problem in any of these. That one's good. However, negative 2. Well, negative 2 minus 2 is negative 4. That's okay. But what happens when I move to this next one? Negative 2 plus 2 is 0. Uh-oh. That one doesn't work. So I only have one answer this time. So you do have to watch for this. It'd be terrible to go through a quiz, do all the right work, and then miss points because you didn't take the extra 5 seconds to check. So be aware of that. Okay, we're going to move down to number 4. Now we're getting into a different issue here. We look and we're like, well, some of these are fractions and some of them aren't. Okay, always look upon something that's not as a fraction by putting it over 1. And then go ahead again and start building your fractions. And again, it's worth it to take the little bit of extra time to show steps than it is to try and hurry. So I look through, well, 3 is the only number I see there, so 3 will be my numeric part, my coefficient, and I just have x's. Okay, this isn't bad. Again, we'll take our numerators. Even the 12 and the 2, those are still there as part of my numerator to begin. So now I start going through and go, okay, x to get to 3x. Well, I need the 3. Okay. Here, 1 to get to 3x, I need the whole thing. So I need the 3 and the x. Same thing with my 2 here. I need the 3 and the x. And finally, with my last fraction, I already have the 3x in both places, so that one gets to be left alone. So again, at this point, I sort of forget about my denominator. It served its purpose and served it well, but I don't need it anymore. That looks a whole lot easier to work with. So I go ahead, I work on getting all of my x's to one side, all of my constant terms to the other, and get my answer. Again, double check. Negative 1/6, that's okay. 3 times negative 1/6, we're good there. That's the type of thought process that we're working through here. So all the factoring that I keep harping on you about, you've got to know this or you're going to be in trouble with these. Okay. Solving an equation with 2 solutions, again, make sure you're checking answers. Same thing, if you see something that's factorable, factor it first. You have to do that with all of your denominators before you start. See a binomial with a plus or minus, put parentheses around to remind you that that's a unique quantity. And any whole numbers we put over 1 to remind us they're fractions too and need a common denominator. So we make our fraction bars and we start saying, okay, no real coefficients to work with except 1, so that's not a big deal. But here, I see an x minus 1 that I would need in each of my fractions. And I have an x plus 1. That's unique. That's different. And just a reminder again, just because I see another single x minus 1 over here does not mean I need it. If I had two of the same one, like 2x minus 1s, then I would. So let me recopy my numerators. Now we go to build our numerators again. So let's see. Got the x minus 1, don't have the x plus 1, so I need it. Ooh, in the middle here, I don't have either of them. From 1 to this, so both of them have to get squeezed in here. And finally, my last one, I have the x plus 1, I have the x minus 1, don't need anything else. And again, the only time we kind of ignore the denominator is when we are solving an equation. Not if we are just simplifying an expression. If this is like what we were doing in the last section, I wouldn't be eliminating this part right here. So again, I'm just going to rewrite this because I want to clearly see what I'm doing. Okay. And then I go through and I distribute. Now for the first terms, that's not bad. Here, be careful. You're not going to distribute -2 to these and then to these. What you want to do is multiply those terms together. But in looking at that, I know what this is going to be. X plus 1, x minus 1 is x squared minus 1. And again, I'm going to take the time to take an extra step here instead of trying to rush through like a crazy person and end up making a mistake. So I'll distribute my -2 through now. And again, I see x squared terms. The party is where x squared is at. So go ahead, combine like terms. The 14 wants to come on over to the party on this side. And again, we're back in a situation where you need to slide and divide, do mental math, whatever it is you happen to do on this one. And once again, we're going to be able to factor this. And once you've factored it, set each of those factors equal to 0, and you are going to get 2 solutions. Now again, make sure, take that moment to plug each of these back in and make sure they work. Nothing worse than having one that doesn't work. So again, I plug this back in. 4/3 doesn't cause a problem. -3 doesn't cause a problem, and we're good to go. Yes, it takes some time. Yes, you're going to need to show work. Yes, sometimes they're not going to come out real nice and you may have to do some extra factoring, but that's part of the business. We're in upper level math now. Okay, so one last time. One more little twist here. Solving the equation by cross multiplying, again, make sure to check your answer. So just like we have before, I'm literally going to write out what I'm multiplying. I'm going to go ahead and distribute. Oh, there's x squared again. Party time on the left side of the equation. So everything that's on the right side needs to be moved over because we want equals 0 on the right side. Those of you that are fans of the diamond, here's your chance. But again, we're just multiplying to get the 10, adding to get the -7. -5 and -2 get +10 and add up to -7 and set those each equal to 0. Don't you forget to double check. And again, it's only denominators that we're checking. Numerators, we don't care if we get 0. We can do 0 divided by something and get 0, but denominators give us error messages. So if I plug in 2, that gets me 1, that gets me 1, that's good. 5 would get me 10, would get me 4, we're good. Okay, so both of our answers worked this time. Hopefully this helps you out some, but if not, you need to come in and get some assistance before the quiz and do your homework. Rewind to me if you need to and listen again. Have a good one.